H1B seat is just 85,000 and we're having what, like 4 lakh applications every year. At the moment, the first H1 was no, I decided H1 may not be the path for me.
So he did not wait. My guest today, Harsh Maheshwari, engineered a way to speedrun from intern to director in just about 2 years.
I was aiming for a principal role and started behaving that right on day one. So it was purely one strategic decision after other.
Harsh realized pretty early on in his career that if he did the work no one else wanted to do or no one else could do, he would get promoted and this is a big and, he would also qualify for the O1 Genius Visa.
This is a storyline I want to do as well. Started working towards it right then and there. I did not wait for my second or third lottery. O1 isn't magic. It's evidence. It has nothing to do with being famous.
Stop relying on luck, start building your evidence. Here is the proven way that you can do the same. Roll it. Welcome to the only podcast in the world featuring stories of high agency individuals who are just a few steps ahead of us. Harsh, welcome.
Hey Naman, how are you today?
Doing very well, and ever since we calendared this, I've honestly been really excited to pick your brain around a couple different topics. I want to start off with the O1 visa. Full disclosure, in the past 6 months or so, there have been a couple times where I found myself going on to Gemini, that's my AI of choice, of late at least, and then asking it, hey, knowing what you know about me, do you think I could qualify for the O1? And obviously, as you can, probably assume, nothing it says is helpful. It just feels like it just feels so inaccessible, right? Just because of how deep it is and such. So really wanting to ask you, and we will be obviously covering your background and such as well in parallel, but when was it that you first realized that this is something that you could look into, and what was that like for you?
So, bit of a background, right? I landed in the US in fall of 21. Had a speed run through my masters to completed, my 4 semester course in 3 semesters. Got
Okay.
multiple
And
offers and
what
decided.
did you study and where? Sorry.
Oh, sorry, yeah. I got a master's in computer science from San Diego State University. It's one of the
Gotcha.
most underlooked in the university in terms of quality of professors. That's what I want to highlight.
Nice.
A lot of what I was able to achieve, I would love to credit to the professors there. But yeah, after I graduated in December 22, I got multiple offers.
Mhm.
Decided to join this interesting new team at Optim called Unified Enterprise Search,
Okay.
and joined around Jan timeline. They put in my application for H1 in March. I did not get selected in
Jan
April.
last year, do you mean, or Jan 2022?
Jan
I guess
2023.
three. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
Yep.
Jan 2023. March 23 was my first lottery. I did not get through. And
Mhm.
knowing what I knew that, yep, there's a lot of competition, the H1B seat is just 85,000 and we're having what, like 4
Mhm.
lakh applications every year. Um,
Yeah.
Decided to reach out to my manager who also had a, similar career, from F1. And instead of even
Interesting.
going to H1, he did an O1 and then, he's now a citizen. So that
Wow. Awesome.
kind of served, yeah, like as a mentor plus anchor for me as to, oh, this is a storyline I want to do as well. And started working towards it right then and there. I did not wait for my second or third lottery. At the moment, the first H1 was no, I decided, H1 may not be the path for me. And turns out it wasn't. I did not get into the third lottery. I applied for O1
Oh,
and it was
wow.
approved
Okay.
after that. Yeah.
Huh.
So,
So I guess for those of our viewers who, and I mean I am one of them, right? I don't mean to put myself aside from this. I'll tell you what I know about it, right? And then you can probably color in the gaps, which there will be a lot of. So I know that there are, I think, three criteria. I think one of them has to do with publications in some way. I think another one is to show that you are getting paid like a big salary. I don't know. I feel like that's the extent of my knowledge on this.
so
So
I'll
for
go
those,
back to,
yeah, exactly. Go
yeah,
ahead. Yeah.
I'll go back to your statement about, Gemini being your choice of AI. No matter what AI you go to, a lot of what it says is based on, public forums that already exist out there. And
Correct.
if you see the general trend, whether it's LinkedIn, Reddit, people want you to believe that if you have five publications or 10 publications, you're automatically eligible for O1. And that gets funneled into these LLMs, and that's what they say to you as well. That's, I think, honestly, the biggest misconception that's floating around today. So yes, USCIS does say that there are 8 criterias. You need to fulfill 3 of them. And again, none of this is legal advice. It's just my experience.
Totally. Yep.
Those 3, criterias could be anything, but it has to be centered around the story. And that all
I
boils
see.
down to what your domain of expertise is. And if you're able to build a narrative around that with 3 or 4 criterias, I think that's when you qualify for an O1 visa. In my case, it was simple, apart from my experience in US, I did have some experience back in India working with JP Morgan Chase, again in a similar
Okay.
domain of search. So problem was same, you need to search on a particular domain. There it was fintech. In US it was healthcare. There it was more of, traditional software engineer search, which uses Elasticsearch, bunch of other things. Here it was more AI and NLP based. So I sat with multiple lawyers trying to figure out what that domain could be. It did, the first lawyer was not the one I stuck with at the end. So I took multiple consultations and
Okay.
finally decided that yes, the area of domain I need to focus on is AI/ML in healthcare, and more specific on search. That is
Got it.
something that I had crystallized by the May of 23, which is, 1 month after I got my first H1B reject, that, you're not selected in the pool. Once that began, I started, again, I was in the Unified Enterprise Search team, so things lined up nicely. I started taking up on more and more projects which were search focused that hadn't been solved before. One thing with healthcare is, these are very slow moving systems, and specifically in US, it's a big problem where to search a doctor, I think you need to do 3 or 4 different operations today. Even if you are on, your own provider's app, you select a specialty, whether it's, primary care, or vision or dental, and within that you then type your doctor's name, which is not intuitive, right? I think we, or I would rather say my team decided to revamp that with a Google like search. You just put in your name or condition, or,
Wow.
just what you're feeling, and you would get doctors recommended in your location, or, basically whatever location you want. So this, believe it or not, this sort of approach doesn't exist in US, and we were able to pull a patent out of it. Uh,
Huh. Wow. So this
yeah,
was as a part of your company, right?
this
Your
was as
name
part
was
of
on
my
the patent,
company.
though.
Correct. Yeah,
Got
my
it.
name was on the company. It's issued to Optum. Even till date, it's used by multiple subsidiaries of Optum, which, increases the citation count, as you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so that was the first thing. The second thing was, again, building on the same narrative, right? We were confident that this technology would disrupt a lot of our competitors' work that they were already doing. So instead of releasing it right away, we were strategic to first showcase it on our investor conference, which got in a
Ah,
huge applause. This was
interesting.
again in October 23. That, again, helped build my profile, like I said. Um,
Hmm.
Similarly,
Around
more
that central narrative that you were talking about.
the
Yeah.
central narrative, right? Um, so this was, this kind of, helped me fulfill the original, author criteria with the
Ah,
patent, some media
right.
publication with
Right.
the investor conference, and, by the end of the first year, I was at least qualifying 2 of the 8 criterias. Now, bear in mind, I would have been automatically qualified for a critical role and high salary, but I did not want to use those 2 specifically because, it's a very subjective criteria. You don't have hard proof for it. Um,
So, like, they don't have any pay brackets. They just say that it should be high paying. That's it.
that's it, yeah. And,
Oh, okay. That's
you,
so weird. What?
it is weird. USAS says, you should be in the top 10 percentile pay area in your range, but is it for example, someone working for a high paying startup in SF lives in Kansas. What does that mean?
Exactly. I was just going to say that. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
It,
yeah.
it
So
just
again,
depends on geography way too much. Yeah.
even my lawyers, they constantly repeated this thing, right? O1 isn't magic, it's evidence. It's It has nothing to do with being famous. It's all about prove that your work is rare and it impacts a lot of people. It's all about evidence. And again, high salary is one criteria. They and I again, even I feel it's not easy to justify if that's one of the three strong criteria you're trying to push. This is end of 2023. So yeah, by that time I already had two criterias. Again, the
Yeah.
same
So what
work.
did you end up taking instead of what you said the salary? So instead of that, did you pick something else or?
Right. So that's when I decided to leverage my current situation that oh, I am the one who's developed this amazing technology that got published in an investor conference. I need a promotion. And that pushed into the critical role criteria. Not just critical role, right? Along with being a hands-on engineer, I also mentored people, so I asked for direct reports as well. So those are the three criteria I targeted primarily. Over the span of next 2 years,
Got it.
a lot more came in as well because of my public presence, going on to AI and healthcare conferences, being part of panels, stuff like that. So yeah, it was all just systematic decision one after the other, if you want to say that. And yeah,
Yeah.
uh,
When
honestly, I
did
think
you end up getting your visa?
so towards the end, I got a bit lazy with filing. Again, it's an intensive process. Even when you're ready, right? You need your lawyers to write up the entire petition, and you need to review that. I think the review took the longest time for me. It took 3 months from I want to say April of 2025 all the way till July 2025 to get that petition reviewed by me. And again, there are multiple back and forth with the lawyers. you know, uh, Recommendation letters that you need to get to prove that whatever you're saying is true. And that's probably another piece where a lot of people think that, oh, if you get a letter from anyone, it would work. You need to have three letters from your work, either current or previous, and two or three letters from independent industry experts who shouldn't be completely strangers to you. You can't just go
Right.
online, find an random person who's an expert in this and request a letter. That doesn't work, and it often fires back as an RFE or a rejection. So
I
again,
see.
since I had public presence with conferences and stuff like that, I was able to get to different people, get those letters, and that was another 2 months. So my filing was roughly at the end of September 2025, and I got approved for my O1 in the first week of November.
Wow. So I have a couple questions. So one of the first things you said was when you were first talking to your lawyers, or I think you mentioned that the company you were talking with, you ended up not going with them. Tell me or talk me through what that first talking phase looks like with the lawyers. Like, do you have something in mind already, and then do you go back and forth in an interview type of way? Like, how does that interfacing work essentially?
Yeah, so I think picking the right set of lawyers is extremely important because just like a lot of digital influencers, a lot of these law firms want you to believe that you're eligible for O1, and I wanted someone who told me that, oh, you're not ready, do XYZ things to be ready. So the very first
I
lawyer
see.
that I
I
had
like that.
interactions with
Mhm.
is he was like, oh, you have two criteria. We could use high salary and just get you approved in the next 3 months. And I was like, no, 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 I don't want to risk it just for the sake of applying. I have time. What can I do to build my profile further? And they were like, no, that's not what we do. So I decided not
Okay.
going up with them. There's also a route, with your company lawyers, right? But more often than not, I find them not helpful unless you have some very good law firms with your company. For me, that was not the case. But again, I
And
think
you mean just in terms of their competence? You're referring to just general purpose competence, where company lawyers are usually not that good.
I don't want to say competence. It's just that one-on-one interaction that they're not able to give. They're very competent, very good at what they do, but they need to handle a pool of about 1,000 people at least.
Ah,
So
I
it
see what you mean.
becomes,
Yeah.
yeah, their attention becomes diluted, and
Right.
it's again for me it was not the right fit because I wanted direct attention for uh, something that would help me stay here longer.
Totally.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so choosing the
And
right
then
lawyer
and then
is important.
correct. Yeah. And then you were saying that when you talk to the later lawyers, they were like, your profile is good, but it's not good enough. Still, you still need to do these things still. And then that's kind of what me gave you assurance that, okay, these are probably who the people that I want to be working with. Is that
Correct.
kind of right?
And I had bunch of strange conversations. There's one law firm that was based locally that said, oh, O1 is only for entrepreneurs. It's not for industry professionals. If you have a startup or something like that, only then you can apply for O1. And I was like, okay, maybe you're not the right law firm for me. Uh, but yeah, the one that I
That's
ended up,
crazy.
I like I said, there's a lot of gray area right on the USCIS website because I, I don't know, any sort of law is a precise practice, and the ones who are able to identify the right meaning of it and get you the right recommendation is honestly the right lawyer, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know the first thing about this site, but it seems to me that something that would really move the needle for me when I'm talking to a lawyer is if they have experience with similar profiles like me, and if they can show that we did it for such and such person, they don't have to tell me their name. But I feel like that is something that would give me a lot of reassurance that okay, these people know what they're doing, they've done this before. And it's not like a lottery all over again where they're like throwing darts in the dark and seeing what sticks. So I'm assuming that's not something that you would want in an ideal world.
Absolutely not. And I think, what you said absolutely makes sense. The lawyer has to be precise. And if you see just, in the last 6 years, right, people used to say that, the O1 visa approval rate is what, 98% or something like that 6 years ago, but it dropped to 90% right now. And even
Huh.
back then, that 98% of that rough number came in from cases which lawyers said yes to, and then you applied rather than just going on a gut feeling. But now, just because of
Ah,
that trend
interesting.
and scare around H1, oh, I'm running out of time, let me rush into this. People are applying a lot more hastily, is what I feel. And we were seeing more rejections than what we saw 6 years ago.
Huh. So help
Mhm.
me understand this, right? And I understand that if this is not something that you can, you have the most insight on, but here's the thing. In all of so I've had a similar experience as you, except my master's was not speedrun. I did 2 years at Purdue. I have lived in the US for almost 5, 6 years now. I know personally, if I include you, 3 people that have O1 visas, which just feels to me like that ratio, really does not add up. So what do you think the reason is that people don't usually go for this? Like, is it just that the lawyer fees and such is very expensive? Do people not have conviction, or are they really right in not applying because they're just not anyway going to get it? So, what is your ratio, right? Like in terms of your circles, I guess, if you can
I don't
share.
know. Maybe it's just my experience, right? But there's a misconception around cost for O1. Because if you compare it with H1, the lawyers that file for me, it costs them less than filing for H1 because there's no LCA or, that DOL cost that is associated. I'm not sure about the exact numbers though, but I
Yeah,
know it
yeah,
ended up
totally.
costing them
So,
less even with
mhm.
premium processing. So I don't think cost is a factor. It's just uh, the level of effort that you need to put into. Now, when I say effort, it is purely building a public profile and then kind of being good at reading, not the chat GPT style, but thorough old school reading. You need to, I don't know, flush your brains out after work and just see what the lawyer sent you. And if even the slightest thing doesn't make sense, uh, maybe a error in your title or a skill set could trigger an RFE. I don't know. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
another
yeah.
that's another important thing is, yeah, AI is good. Don't use that for any legal stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean that's obviously yeah, helpful call out. One thing I want to say though is I think this is true for most people, but at least for me, like my organization applied for my H1B, I didn't really have to do anything, right? So in that way, there is a cost, right? Because for your O1,
Oh
it would
yes.
probably be money out of your pocket,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
And
Some
but
lawyers, do
but
a
you're still saying that that's probably not the reason why people don't apply according to you,
I
is I
don't think so.
think
You
is
know,
what you were saying.
there are a lot of law firms out there right now that do first consultation free, and even after that, I think O1 consultation is reasonable, a lot more reasonable than what people think lawyers cost out there. I don't want to give out exact numbers for sure, but people can
Interesting.
research on their own.
Of course.
It's
Right, right.
not I don't think cost should ever be a factor. And when you just talk about cost to company, I think it's no it should be indifferent to them whether they're applying for O1 or H1, as long as it's both in the same either non-premium processing or premium processing criteria. So
Right.
but yeah, let's contrast this, right? You work at Cushman Wakefield. They applied for the H1B. What was your experience on that?
Yes, I mean, it was probably not even 10% of what you mentioned in terms of, what you said around after work, you need to flush your brain
That's
out and, sit, lock in, as the kids say. Um, so for me, it was really just as simple as like I just gave them all of my information. They filled everything out,
the thing now.
sent it to me for review.
You
There were a couple like little catches here and there that I was like, hey, that feels that might not be accurate, blah blah. And then they like just fixed it. The more notable thing for me was that I got my stamp this past year in October, and I was originally planning to get it in December or January. And right now, I have friends that went to get their stamp and that are just still stuck in India, right? Because because of what happened in this past December. And so I really, one of the, to pull it back to O1, I just feel like the aspect where you're in complete control of your future, so to speak, um is probably for me the biggest reason of all of them when it comes to looking at stuff like O1. EB1A I think is something similar, but I hear that that's a much more bigger, way more advanced version of basically O1. But I have heard that O1 helps in terms of getting EB1A. Is that right?
I think it does, right? It definitely sets your base, but from there it's 100x climb. Uh, I wanted to,
Okay.
the reason I asked you about your experiences because I wanted to give you one contrasting example, right? So I know, a lot of people are stuck in India because of the December mass cancellation of visa slots, and that's a headache you face after getting your visa with H1. On O1, I think in most cases, whatever you know, preparation effort you need to put in at least till date is before you get your approval, and after that, I think it's
Mhm.
again relatively easier path than H1. That being said, for you or most of the people on H1, right, it would have been that, oh, H1B is a standard process. A lot of companies know that, and they would request documents to submit it. In my case and a lot of other people's cases, we first need to explain our company lawyers what O1 is because they're just used to dealing with H1B
Mm.
cases over the time. There may be some lawyers in their firm who
Yep.
know what it is,
Yep.
but the ones that regularly deal with immigration within the company are not aware. Um, it also impacts, when people are. I know one of my friend who's on O1 trying to get a job switch, and every single interview he has to explain what O1 is, why he,
Okay.
um, he is on O1 essentially and not H1B, and people think that's a bad thing. When I say people, it's just recruiters because they have absolutely no clue on
Yeah.
immigration. So there are challenges on both parts. But with whatever happened in December, I think I got lucky with O1.
Yeah, and actually something you said also has opened the door now to um I don't even think I know the like what sort of doors open up with an oven. I know it's better, but to help contrast in what ways, like in terms of immigration pathway or stay or job switching and such. I guess what unlocks do you get out of an oven that you would not with an H1B?
Um, in terms of your career, right? I don't think it matters because once you get a job, nobody really cares about what visa you're on unless you decide to switch.
Totally. Totally. Yep.
When it comes to switching, I want to say H1B is a slightly easier path because there's a well-defined process for an H1B transfer. There is no process for an O1 transfer till date in US. And let's say if you want to switch to a new company, you would file a new O1 petition. And, again, pray to God it gets approved. So Um,
Interesting.
I think everything else is
So
pretty
is
much.
O1 also linked to your organization then? I'm
O1
assuming.
is also linked to your organization, and again, with all the external consults that I had, at the end, I had to rely on the mercy of my company lawyers to file it, which also meant,
Ha!
that,
Yeah,
yep, I needed to have a good enough lawyer who could convince lawyers in other firm to file it on my behalf. So that is again, I think, one factor which not a lot of people tell you that yeah, O1 is great.
true.
It's
Yeah,
not. It's
I
not
had no
gold.
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's just
But
like
I
H1.
I
It's
do
tied to.
think.
Mhm.
Mhm. Sorry,
Sorry,
sorry. Go
just
ahead.
like
Yeah.
H1, it's tied to your employer. I think the only benefit is, when you change your role internally, and if it's a completely different thing, right? You don't need to do your LC again.
I see. So in this event, God forbid, if you if you're impacted with a layoff,
Mhm.
you don't have a 60-day clock though? Is that right? At
Everything
least.
is same. There's a 60-day clock on O1 as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. So, so pardon me, but what is the unlock here? The 6 year, like what do you call it? The
Yeah.
re re-verification or whatever.
The biggest unlock
I guess
is
why should one
in
get an O1?
okay.
Yeah.
With again, since you mentioned layoffs, right? With layoffs going around, I've seen a lot of companies not filing for perm. And if you're an H1 without a perm, you max out at 6 + 1, 7 years, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, that's what
With
I meant. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yep.
With O1, you get an infinite extension by default. So you get a 3-year O1 visa, and then you can
I
extend
see.
it infinitely, even without perm. So that's one major benefit. The largest benefit, at least in my opinion, is, it sets your base for EB1A. You put 2, 3 more years in building your profile, getting to the top of your field, and that kind of, with the right set of people around you, make you, eligible for EB1A.
This is so interesting. And is this why some people that I know, like they make their own companies and then use that to apply for O1 because that way then they can never be laid off? Is that something that happens?
Honestly, I have no idea about if that's the reason, but I know,
Yeah.
you know, wha- again, the 8 criteria listed on USCIS, they also put a asterisk at the last saying that, or comparable evidence. So that is something which people miss. So being an entrepreneur is a good comparable evidence for ownership. You're not owning any IP, but you own a company. And if you attract
Interesting.
funding, let's say
I
from
see.
YC or A16Z or Superset, for example, you've proved your value enough that you can, one, sustain a company, generate jobs, which is big in, USCIS's eyes. And that, again, no legal advice, but that should help with O1 for sure.
Yeah, yeah, no, and like about the legal advice stuff, there will be a disclaimer at the very beginning because I also want to absolve myself of any. I don't know why there would be a lawsuit, but so yeah, rest assured that there is no misappropriation of anything that we say here. It's just two people that are trying to figure this thing out, which is just by definition, as you keep saying, it's very hard to figure out just because there is such a nebulous definition across the board. I think talking about all of this for me would not make as much sense unless we also contrast it with honestly, like your LinkedIn is it's just kind of such a spectacle to see how you've risen so quickly. And like it actually boggled me when I first like looked at it. Like it seemed like in almost 2 years or so you moved from your first job in the US, which was an intern, I believe, at Autodesk, straight to I think you're now a principal, or like at a director level. So can you talk us through kind of your career trajectory? And then once you've done that, you can share the like secret behind your, apparently one promotion every 2 months or something like that.
It's definitely not 2 months. It was a bit longer than that. But, a lot of what I was able to achieve in US, I can credit back to my first job in India. I used to work for JP Morgan Chase in Mumbai. And I tell this to a lot of people, your first job is very important. Your first boss is very important. Your first mentor is very important. Yeah, I know, getting into Google or Microsoft or FANG is extremely cool, but none of it would matter if you don't have, a supporting mentor or boss. So, uh, JP Morgan is, one of the most tech savvy banks I know of. And I started off working on a lot of greenfield projects, right? When I started, whether it's creating, a common platform for 7 different portals that existed to reduce uh, customer resolution time. It's called Navigator, and it still exists in the company.
Hmm.
But one thing that I knew was, implementation is one thing, but what do I do to stand out? And in the first 1.5 year, it was just learning new things and making sure what we do makes sense, not just as engineers, but also to customers. So,
And
you know,
real quick, your background was in computer science, right? For your undergrad, is
yes,
that right?
yes, it was in computer science, and
Okay. And your what was your
what
job
was the
title
job
at JP
actually at
Morgan
the
when you
Jacob?
started? Just software engineer?
Software engineer, yes, yeah.
Got it.
Yeah,
Cool.
I
Yep.
joined right off the campus, into the technology analyst program as SDE. That was fun, but going back a bit, I had a lot of, my uncle and a lot of his friends were engineers, so I saw them, started coding with them. I think when I was 12 or something. This was in
Wow.
C and all of those languages. Yeah, that's where the base set in for me that I
Yeah.
want to be a computer engineer. Coming back to JP Morgan, I think the first year, my commute from home to office was 2 hours. The very first thing I got was a Lenovo tab. Used to look at YouTube videos around system design 4 hours a day for 1.5 year.
Wow.
And at that,
Wow.
at end of that 18-month mark, I was able to write code much better than a lot of my peers. Again, this is something just because you have a appetite to learn, grow, and apply. But that probably is not it, right? I think writing code, beautiful and elegant solutions is one thing, but then soft skills is probably equally important. It's maybe even more than 50% important. The way you present it in a way, understand your target audience, present it in a way that they understand. It's not always technical jargons. It's how do you convert technical terms into executive terms into technical constraints, and then shape your conversations. So there were times where, just to prepare for a meeting, I used to wake up an hour early, see who the audience is, decide my script beforehand, and over the time it came naturally. So it's a lot of things that
Huh.
new SDs overlook, but it's not wrong to write a script for what you're going to present initially until it comes naturally to you.
Mhm.
So um
Yeah, it really is sounding like your first job was just, it just sounds perfect for a person that's just entering the
we
corporate
should
field. I want to say this because so I like you, I had a very similar experience where my commute was also 1.5 hours each way to my work. I was a technology consultant at PwC. Except in my case, when I look back now, I I was just really pretty much coasting most of the time, and I know this is a reflection of me more than anything else or anyone at PwC because they were great, right? Do you think there is? Do you think this would all have panned out differently if you were also at a company that wasn't making you work as hard as maybe JP Morgan was, and
I
maybe
think
at the
so.
time what seemed like a struggle was actually the biggest boon you ever got?
I think so. It's easy for new engineers to get into these companies, get good salaries, and then, just lose a sense of what comes next. Um, so of course, I did put in hard work, but the direction was set in by the work I was assigned by my mentors and managers, as well as just the overall culture in JP Morgan Chase. I'm not saying it doesn't exist in other companies, it does. Uh, but I would credit it more to, the individuals around you rather than the company. So the team I was in played a big role in my development. Until date, I just,
Mm.
even after, my O1 approval, I called them and thanked them that, wherever I am, I'm because of, whatever direction you gave me initially. So that's funny.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And when did you decide you wanted to go for a master's then? Like, did you always know, or did that just seem natural
Uh,
then?
I actually know. So that's a funny story. So we were working on cool products, right? Certs and stuff like that, and we were able to successfully create a search solution that combined client accounts, client contacts, transactions, anything you want into one single platform. So if somebody calls, let's say, Chase helpline, and they need help with their account, it took 7 different systems initially, but right now it's just one system, which is something our team built. But then there was this funny demo from one of our Chicago teams, which used AI, ML, and NLP to do even better search, not just keyword, but proper semantic search. And I was like, this is something that I think I need to get into. And I decided to, one, look at, a lot of online Coursera courses if I can get into AI, ML. Tried a few, failed miserably because I realized this is not something you can do on your own. Um,
Yeah.
and a lot of my friends from DJ Sang, we were already in US, doing masters
Yeah.
and, getting into specialized tracks. So that's when I decided to decided to get my masters essentially. So 4 years at JP Morgan,
Got it.
good work ex, enough savings to, fund my education initially. And yep, that's when I decided, I'll get a master's in CS, specializing in AI and ML. Yeah.
Nice. And then your first internship was that pretty straightforward then, like with all of your work
Yep.
ex and such, were you able to get it
Yeah.
pretty easily, or was it still a little bit tricky?
I think it was a bit tricky, partially because, my unpreparedness, I would call it. Coming to US, there's
Okay.
a bit of a cultural shock. You don't realize what to expect, stuff like that. And then the moment first semester ends, you're supposed to start applying for internships, which you have no idea about. There's a completely different process in India versus over here. Um, whether it's lead code grind or just, formulating your answers for behavioral questions. I started off it a bit late in, I want
Hmm.
to say, end of Feb. So I was very much at the, deadline to apply for CPT when I got an offer from Autodesk. So that's purely on me, nothing else.
Yeah.
And I honestly do not remember seeking out for help either, which is one mistake I made. If you're not sure about something, or if you're entering new territory, right? Talk to people who are familiar with that and get some
Yeah.
guidance. And honestly, if podcasts like yours existed at that time, who knows, maybe it would have been a different story for me.
Yeah, and obviously that's part of my motivation for of doing these. And we were thinking about the episode we did with, or I did with Pragya earlier, and Pragya and I were actually colleagues at PwC. So it was like a full circle moment. Yeah, she was 1 year junior to me, so she joined a year after I did, and then yeah. Anyway, so we continued to stay in touch, and she's now crushing it over at Amazon. What about your first full time offer though? Did you still join as a senior engineer, or was it just engineer? Because I know this is one thing that a lot of international students worry about, that say I had 2 years of work ex, now I'm starting out, should I pick analyst or senior analyst, so like level 1 or 2? So do you have any advice around that?
Honestly, the times were different when I was applying. Right now, the market is so tough that my advice would be, go for what you get, um,
I
over
see.
over at least titles. And even when I was applying, right, I was not applying for titles, rather, the job relevancy and what I want to do. So when I applied, when my internship ended, right, I already had an offer from Autodesk to join as a senior SD, which I don't think they usually do. They do an SD, and then in the next year or so, if you're eligible, they'll promote you to a senior SD.
Wow.
So that is what gave me the confidence to, I think I have 4 courses left. Let me get it in a semester and join Autodesk early. In that time, I applied to multiple companies. I think I had offers from Meta, Optin. Um,
Oh shit.
I don't remember. I don't remember the last
Nice.
company's name, but yeah, I had 4 offers in hand. I was almost certain I was going to join Meta, but then they started pulling out offers from their interns, which kind of made me a bit scared. And again, my
Huh.
interview at Optum was one of the most craziest interview ever. And I knew this team is up to something big. And, yeah, once Meta was out of the line, I decided to go into Optum.
I've never once heard somebody say that their interview experience was one of the craziest ever. Are you able to
So, yeah.
share about what made it so
Uh,
crazy?
so one of my last courses at San Diego State was theoretical computational science. No one really takes that, course because it's so difficult. You need to
Yeah. I
have,
remember it from my bachelor days. I would not recommend at
yeah, yeah,
all.
yeah. And I think one of the most easiest proof I want to say is mathematical induction. So my interview started off with technical questions, problem solving. The last question, which I think was the decider, was, can you write a function to reverse a string? And I'm like, wait, we've done graph, we've done trees. Why are you asking this question right now? I approached it with,
Yeah.
the typical lead code mindset. You write a simple solution first, you optimize for space, stuff like that. But it's reverse a string, right?
Right.
What can you do? So
Right.
uh, the interviewer who then became my boss was pretty happy with the solution, and he's like, "Oh, can you prove it that it works now?" And like, I can write test cases. He's like, "No, no, no,
Wait,
no, no.
I'm
You need
so
to."
lost. So hold on, hold on. So
Yeah,
what was your solution? So I'll put
simple
myself on the
solution.
spot. I would probably calculate the length, go to the last pick, write
Hmm.
that first, n minus one, go like
Right.
that. Is that
Yeah.
valid? I don't know.
It is. The only extra thing I did was check for length, because I know, the solution I was writing was in Python, and they have a length limit on how long your string can be. So I did a check first,
Uh huh.
wrote a simple, two-pointer solution to reverse, and that was it. The next question that came in was very strange. Can you prove it that it works? And like, we can run it against
Uh huh.
multiple test cases. I even have considered large input. And he's like, no, 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 no. Can you actually write a proof that it works? And all of a sudden it connected. I could use mathematical induction to prove this. So I started off with, oh, see,
Right.
if I use one as a base case,
Yep.
one is always its
Mm-hmm.
reverse, it'll work. Assume it works for n, prove that it works for n plus 1, and he was blown. He's like,
Hmm.
the only other person to come up with this solution was one of his colleagues in Intuit, and he was happy, and he hired me as a lead right then and there.
Wow,
So that's why
dude,
I said,
that's
San
crazy.
Diego State is such an underrated university. The professors are extremely good, and they, believe it or not, actually want you to succeed and teach with their whole heart.
Mm. That is so cool. That is actually like I've never heard of somebody just getting hired on the spot. I just feel like that's just stuff that happens in movies and such. So that is so cool. Wow. So this was your offer at Optum, and then I think you did touch on that earlier, where you just did really good work, and then you made sure that it was visible for your managers, and then kept requesting for promotions. Was that the playbook, more or less?
Right. Another thing that I usually recommend people is, you behave that you are in the role that you're aiming for. So I was aiming for a principal role and started behaving that right on day one. Um, Again, it doesn't mean stretching beyond your work hours, or even you know working on weekends. Absolutely not. It's just making sure your impact is beyond your radius. One, delivering solutions
Mm.
is one thing, being the smartest person in the room is also one thing, but then if you're able to make everyone around you efficient and smarter at the same time, that creates an impact like no other. So
Yeah.
whether it was mentoring junior SDs or senior engineers in the team, I took it all up. And another piece was also, picking up hard
Wow.
problems. So one example that really, really shaped my career, and again, was one of the criterias that helped me fulfill one of the criteria of O1, was at the end of 23, there is this group that reached out to us that, you do search. We're trying to build a solution where we want to solve, the attrition problem in healthcare, which means if you as a patient, go to a doctor, there are high chances you may not like the way they treat you, and you would try to find a
Hmm.
new doctor. And whether it's data, migration cost, or just the cost to find a new doctor, it tends to cost healthcare companies a lot. Um,
Uh huh.
Believe it or not, this figure adds up to $11.3 billion every year, just to retain patient, or the money they lose by patients moving from one doctor to another. So the team had done pretty good research about how they
Huh.
want to do a reverse thing. You as a patient, Dr. X is perfect for you based on XYZ parameters. So they've done pretty good research. They just did not
Hmm.
have enough technical, knowledge to build it on their own. And there are a bunch of, people in my team, but I said yes to that problem. We can take it on. The reason a lot of people said no was
Hmm.
because they needed it in 4 months, which in healthcare it's
Got
slightly
it.
difficult. So I took on that problem. That's when, I got a chance to manage a large budget, hire my own, or hire a a new team from scratch for this project, deliver it in 4 months, and that
Huh.
was that was the highlight of that. I think was the highlight of my tenure at Optum. It till date
So
is the
help me
fastest.
understand. Uh-huh.
Sorry,
So,
go ahead.
first of all, that is no, first of all, that is so impressive to me. What were the stakes like? So if this had failed, right, you take on this scary project, it doesn't work out. Would that, I'm assuming, would have like cost you heavily, right?
It would have, because this was the first time I was managing a budget directly. And it would have meant that no promotions, or no, again, losing trust with leadership is the biggest stake, and then no promotions for the next
Yeah.
couple of years, which would have uh, it wouldn't have mattered as much, but would have made my own slightly difficult, I want to say. So
But so why did you do it? Like, why did you take such a risk then?
one, when they were explaining the problem, right, I knew a very clean and easy way to implement this, because it tied back to my experience at JP Morgan, where they had something similar. Uh, and again, I'm talking in a lot of search related terms. I'm sorry for that. But just by tweaking their, I want to say, model into more of a graph like structure, I could do that very fast, very efficiently,
Got it.
and the implementation time would have dropped, rather than just what they were recommending. So with that in
I
mind, I
see.
knew that this could be done in 4 months, which involved hiring a new team, which usually takes a month, in large organizations, and then actually implementing it in the remaining 3 months. So we did that. Of course, there were challenges where
Yep.
we almost were deciding to cut scope for one feature entirely, but ended up delivering that too. So yeah, I
Nice.
wrote a blog about it too, how we did it, why we did it also. And yeah,
That's awesome. Yeah. Send that to me and I'll be sure to link it in the show notes because I would love to read that. And I'm sure a few of our listeners would also appreciate from reading that. Um, I think in summary, I- I'm slightly, feeling a little bit sad because what you're telling me, Harsh, is the cheat code for an O1 and fast promotions and all of these good things is really just expertise. It's just hard work. It's a strong belief in oneself. And nothing you said screamed shortcut to me, but maybe that is the ultimate takeaway here. I
yeah,
think you would agree.
I've heard this quote so much time since I landed in US. There is no free lunch. There is no shortcut. Uh, Honestly, the only shortcut I would say is your belief in yourself and hard work. Um, Again, definitely, I want to say there was some luck factor early up in my career where I got the right team, right mentors. But then, ever since I landed in US, it was purely one strategic decision after other, choosing short term discomfort over long term comfort,
Yep.
and making sure that
Mm.
you you choose what makes sense for you, not for others. Which
Mm.
is, I think, another thing I want to highlight is, a lot of people ask, why did you leave a director level role for something like a senior architect at Superset? If
Yeah.
even you were in my shoe, this job was a no-brainer. I get to build at the heart of AI every single day. What I was doing for one company, I get to do it for so many different companies. And to give a background, Superset is a startup studio. We do fund startups, but at the same time, we co-found and build them as well. So it's like YC, but not just funding. So yeah, working with all of these different startups every single day, and just the amount of learning in the last 6-7 months has been immense. So uh, again, it was a strategic decision, because AI is where I want to be right now, and building at the heart of it is probably the right move for my career.
That's so cool. And I love how, a lot of people, when they say stuff like that, you're like, internally, you go, yeah, but what do you know about this? Right. But in your case, having learned about your backstory, yeah, like just stuff you've done, right? Like not taking up the meta offer. I feel like that's probably pretty high up the list because, as you said, you knew what you wanted. And it's not like a status game, right? It's what's right for you ultimately is what really matters. And I agree that it's very easy to lose sight of that, right? In the the world we live in, right? It's driven by, so much of it is driven by status. You know, how I will be perceived by some chachi chacha back home in India. But it's not worth going or optimizing for that versus what it is that you want to do. So truly, it's been so amazing learning from your journey, Harsh, and I'm so excited to have made a new friend in you today. If any of our listeners have any questions around O1, is it okay if they reach out to you, or what is a good way to contact you, and what would you be like to be contacted for?
I think LinkedIn is the easiest way. I'm pretty active in, you probably know. And if somebody's
Yep,
still,
I love going through your posts. Yeah.
yeah, and if someone still, thinks LinkedIn is not the right way, I'd be happy to share my email as well.
Sure. Yeah, and I'll be linking them in the show notes for anyone to reach out. But truly, thank you so much for taking the time. This has been so fun, Harsh. Thank you so much.
The pleasure has been all mine, Naman. Thank you so much. And I hope you continue to do this for a long time for a lot of people.
Thank you. It's guests like you that really make it all worth it. So again, thank you. That brings us to the end of that episode with Harsh Maheshwari. I had no idea just how accessible it was to get an O1. If you would like to share this episode with somebody that might benefit from it, please do so. If you would like to support me, the easiest way to do that is by subscribing on YouTube and leaving me up to a 5-star rating on Spotify or any of your favorite podcast apps. Catch you all next time. New episodes every week.